Well, thank you for being here.
I'm delighted to be here. This is fun.
You are a favorite at Netroots Nation and also among the Daily Kos community, so it's great to be here and talking with you.
I've been fighting alongside the Daily Kos community for a very long time.
Yes.
And, you know, it really is a reminder. We make each other stronger in these fights. Folks who are willing to wade in and throw a few punches.
Yes.
That's how we get stuff done.
Yeah, for sure. So I wanted to start with something that we have in common, which is that we have both spent time in the classroom as educators, both with younger children and in higher education.
Yep.
And I'm curious how your background as an educator informs your political priorities.
Oh, that's a good question. So I see it this way. Teachers invest in the future.
Absolutely.
That's the whole deal. I mean, you don't become a teacher because you get this instant jackpot, you know, like you're going to get really rich, or you become a teacher, you invest your life in it because you believe in the future. And that's the part that ultimately got me into these political fights. I thought I would always be the policy wonk, but the policy part of it just wasn't enough. When the fight arrived on my doorstep, and I knew that if I didn't get in this fight, Massachusetts was going to be represented by a Republican for ever and ever and ever into the future. And I thought, well, looks like this one came to you, girl.
Right.
But it was to fight for how we build a future. The Republicans, they know how to build a future for the rich and the powerful. You give them tax breaks, and you keep rolling back the rules. You fire the cops, not the cops on Main Street, the cops on Wall Street. And they get richer and more powerful, and they grab government, and they get richer, more powerful, and they grab government tighter, and they make it work for them, make it work for them, make it work for them. We see it the other way. This is why I'm a Democrat. I believe that the role of government is to help us have a chance to come together to just create those chances, those opportunities for not just some of our kids, but for all of our kids. You know, I tell you, I'll try to tell it short. This story about, as a kid, when I was, you know, I grew up in one of these paycheck to paycheck families. And my three older brothers, they'd all gone off, grown up, you know, they're out of the house. And my daddy had a heart attack. And it's not just the heart attack, it's the long space with no money coming in. And we lost the family house. And the family car. And every night my mama would put me to bed. And after she closed the door, I could hear her start to cry. And I learned words like foreclosure, mortgage. And I remember the day I walked into their bedroom and my mother has the black dress out on the bed. You know the dress. You know, it's the one that comes out only for the weddings, funerals, and graduations. She's pulling that thing on. She's never worked outside the home. She's 50 years old. And she's scared. But she pulls on that dress, puts on her lipstick, blows her nose, and walks to the Sears and gets a minimum wage job. The minimum wage job saved her house and it saved her family. And I always thought of it as a story about, you know, what women do for their families. But it's also a story about the role of government. Because when I was a kid, a full-time minimum wage job would support a family of three. For our family, she could cover the mortgage, she could keep the utilities on, and she could keep food on the table for that long stretch when Daddy didn't have any income. And then once he finally could get back to work, the two of them could keep working, and they started chipping away at those medical bills. And that's because folks in Washington back then thought you measure the minimum wage by whether or not a family working minimum wage can actually support itself. That was your, you know, getting your way into the middle class. Today, a full-time minimum wage job won't keep a mama and a baby out of poverty. It won't it won't permit a family in any state in America to rent a median-priced 2-bedroom apartment. And so the way I see all of this is it's about how you think you build a future. Republicans think you build a future by helping the rich and powerful get richer and more powerful. Teachers, me, I think you build a future by investing in our kids, in our families, in the things that give all of us a real opportunity to build something for ourselves. Yeah.
That really resonates with me, particularly around how people can be resilient when government is working for them.
See, that's the thing. This is not a story of just sit back. That's not what people are doing.
Right.
What gets me is a family now, today. You get out there and bust your tail. And because of the way the policies are structured, man, you just can't pull it together.
Right.
When I was working on my latest book, This Fight Is Our Fight, one of the things I did, I talked to a lot of workers around the country, and they talked about how they struggled to try to get hours. They struggled just to have a chance. Could they get enough hours to make the rent? And they'd work sometimes in the morning and sometimes at night and sometimes across the whole weekend and sometimes long hours all in a row and sometimes be sent home after they'd shown up. You know, that's the other thing that's changed. Back when my mama got that minimum wage job, she got 40 hours a week if Sears was busy, and she got 40 hours a week if Sears wasn't busy.
Exactly.
And she could count on that. They could do their budgeting around that. Today, no. This is why one of the bills I've got right now is called Schedules That Work. And it's just trying to put a little fairness into the basic scheduling. That if you're going to ask people to be on call, you've got to give them a little something for that. You've got to give them a chance. You can't fire them because they ask for a schedule that would let them go back to school.
Right.
You know, the things that let people try to build something. And instead, too much of our government has been about, well, how does that help the profitability of giant corporation? How does it help the company? You know, that was it. Minimum wage. I've sat in hearings now where I've listened to Republicans say, you know, if it were up to me, there wouldn't be any minimum wage at all. Just think of that. You know, let people work for what? $1 an hour, $1 a day? Where's your line, baby? And that's the real problem. We need a government that doesn't look through the lens of what makes shareholders more profitable, but that looks through the lens of what works for working families.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. So I heard you say that you are working on legislation around schedules that work, which is a great segue into my next question, which is around, you know, what are your priorities for the next Congress?
Oh, wow. I think the principal priority for the next Congress is to be in the fight. No, but I mean this sincerely. We got to start delivering. And I recognize, you know, we've got 18 where Trump's still going to be in the White House, most likely. You know, that's how that's going to do. I'm hoping we get the House and the Senate. I'm doing everything I can on that, working hard. But we can't just come to voters every 4 years or every 2 years and say, let me show you my great ideas. We got to show them we're willing to be in these fights, and we are willing to fight, and to fight for opportunity, to fight for the things that matter. Can I just, one little tweak on that would be, for example, around where we are on $1.5 trillion of student loan debt. You know, no, we need it. Here's a piece I got some money for, actually this year, even with the Republicans in control, to be able to expand just a little, got a little expansion on public interest loan forgiveness. We got to bring down that student loan burden. I mean, that's just one. And we got to be in that fight, and we got to be in that fight all the way. And we could keep running through the list, and I'm glad to do it, about what we need to do for working families, what we need to do for people who count on their Social Security, what we need to do for this earth to protect it. These are every day that goes by that we're not, that Donald Trump is trying to roll back emission controls. We got to show not just that we believe that government can be a tool for good for people, we got to show we're willing to fight for that and fight until we deliver.
Yeah.
You
Certainly, yeah. And as an American with 6 figures of student loan debt, I absolutely appreciate you taking on the fight of student loan debt.
What you bet.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd love to switch gears a little bit and ask you a different question. So we're looking at a new Congress coming in November, and you've been around for a while. I'm curious what you wish you had known when you were entering to the Senate.
So that's I'll tell you how I think of that question. Remember, I had a whole life before I ever ran for public office.
And quite a full one.
Yes. And this is the first time I've ever run for public office was when I ran for the Senate. And in fact, I was in the fights alongside Kos long before I thought I was ever going to be on the political end of this. We were the policy wonks trying to push this stuff in. So back in 2011, when Scott Brown is up for re-election in Massachusetts, a moderate Republican, and not the worst guy out there, but a guy who is voting over and over and over for policies that help the rich and the powerful, and voting against the things that help working people, voting against students, voting against the things I cared a lot about. And people came to me and said, you should run. Now, understand, there are people who came to me and said, you should run, but of course you're going to lose. Boy, Democrats really know how to sell you on something, right?
We want you to run anyway.
We want you to run anyway. We want you to run anyway. Nobody can beat this guy. He's got a 65% approval rating. He's sort of got $10 million in the bank. And this business about being a woman. Massachusetts hadn't elected a woman to the Senate. Probably not going to happen. But you should go ahead and run anyway. And I looked at that and I thought, this fight is on my doorstep now. And I don't think anybody else is going to pick it up. And boy, you make that decision. And I decided I'm in this and I'm in it all the way. But for somebody who had never run for office before, it was a little like jumping off a high dive. And you hope, that there's going to be water down there. And here was the part that I didn't know when I first started. How many people said, if you'll take the tip, we'll help in every way we can? How many people said, okay, you run, and now I'm going to help out in this way. I'm going to knock on doors. I'm going to volunteer. I'm going to be part of this. I will do the part that I can do. I still remember it's about summer. It's about this time, back in 2012. And Bruce and I had sneaked off to a movie. We had been, it's been after and after and after, and it's late. I think it's on a Saturday night. And we head off to this movie, and we are ready to come back from the movie, and we're down on the platform, the T platform. We're downtown. We've gone down to the big theater, so you can see it, all the big sound, big screen. And it's late at night, and the trains run very infrequently. The T runs very infrequently at that point. And so we're standing there, and way down on the platform is this young guy. He's got a suit on. He's got his backpack on. And he kind of looks down and looks a couple of times, and finally he walks down and he says, "Are you Elizabeth Warren?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Can I have a picture?" I said, "Sure." So we do our thing and we take a picture, and we stand there and start talking about student loans, about the cost of college. And he said how much he appreciated that I talked about this out on the campaign trail, that he was in college there in Boston, and he came from Western Mass, and he didn't have a family that could help him. And it was summer, and in the summer he works 3 jobs. That's why he was down on the T platform. He'd left his job late at night and was going to be up in a few hours to hit it again on a different job. 3 jobs. During the school year, he works 1 full-time job to try to keep down the amount that he had to borrow. But he still worries about it. He talked about the interest rates, talked about how it was mounting up, talked about what this would mean for the kinds of jobs he would not be able to take coming out of college. So we have this long talk about it. Trains still haven't come. Right? We're still waiting for the tea. And finally says, you know, thanks so much, I really appreciate it. And he shakes hands and he walks down toward the other end of the platform. And then he turns and looks back at me and says, you know, I give money to your campaign every month. And he said, I have you on a regular contribution from my credit card. And I said, oh, maybe you shouldn't do that. You're working hard for your money. I work hard to try to raise money. Maybe you shouldn't do that. And he stood there and said, you don't get it. He said, this is not just your fight. This is my fight too. And that was the part that you really start to realize, yeah, I take the position at one point, but at the end of the day, it really is about what we build together. That is the essence of what it means now to make democracy work, what it means now to take back this government and make it work for all of us. Yeah.
So many people appreciate all the things that you've done around student loans and around education and, you know, just in general, trying to foster this notion that we're all in it together.
Yeah, I believe that.
And people are inspired by you, not just in Massachusetts, but across the country. I'm wondering, what are you most proud of in your work?
Ooh, now I can't do most. This is, you know, there's so many things you get to do. But I'll tell you actually a little tiny one, okay? And isn't it tiny? That's the whole point. I mean, just a slice you may not know about. And that is when I ran for the United States Senate, there was an active discussion in Washington and nationwide about, got to cut Social Security and Medicare, you know, we're going to have to pare them back, can't do this, really have to do that. And my view was, are you kidding me? People have worked all their lives. This was an insurance program they've put in, and the U.S. government is talking about, our policymakers are talking about how to cut this back. And so here was how I saw the argument at this point. There were people, particularly Republicans, who said, oh, let's cut it a lot. And then there were moderates who said, oh, let's only cut it a little. And then there were a handful of progressives who were like, you know. And I thought, no, it's not only that we shouldn't be cutting Social Security, it's that we should be expanding Social Security. Social Security is the way that millions of people have a roof over their heads and food on the table. People who worked hard all their lives. People who had a deal with the rest of us that this is going to happen, right? So, yeah, we got to figure out the right way to do the taxes, the right way to make sure the revenues are there, but by golly, we honor a promise like this. So I make this point when I was out on, you know, campaigning. I talk about it with people. I got into the Senate, and time goes by, and this is kind of still where the conversation is. And then, after I've been there a while, what are called votoramas come along. Now, votoramas are, everybody gets a bunch of different stuff to vote on. Nothing actually happens from them. But I looked at that and thought, it's a way to get people on the record. It's a way to force them out. So I decided, you know, I want a chance in this upcoming votorama to get us all to vote on protecting and expanding Social Security. No cuts, we're going to expand. And you know who I went to ask him to help me on this? Joe Manchin. I figured, right? We'll lock that down. That's where we're going to start this. So we worked the floor. I talked to the leadership about getting this in. And I actually got the leadership to say, this is going to be one of our 3 main votes. A lot of stuff gets pushed out, but we actually will vote. we vote this. And I get almost every single Democrat to sign on. Now, we haven't made change. I get it. We have not been in the majority. We haven't been able to do that. But I got them all on record now. And that has two consequences. The first one is, I haven't heard anybody talking about how we're going to do the cuts and how big are the cuts going to be, and that matters. But the second part is, there's going to be a day we're going to be back in the majority, and when that day comes, I'm going to start calling in all those votes and say, we've already voted for this. This is our position as a party. This is something we're going to get out there and fight for. We have the majority for a reason, and we need to use it. So, make change where you can, in whatever possible way you can.
Yeah. I can appreciate the strategy behind that, but I also appreciate that for my grandparents who are living in Baltimore on a fixed income and rely on their Social Security every month. So
That's right.
I'm glad that that's a priority for you.
And I want to say, it's your grandparents, it's also your mom and dad who don't have to take away their dignity by having to offer them money to keep them supported. And it's part of this continuing reaffirmation. We are in this great boat together. I talk about student loans. I don't just talk about with young people. I go to senior citizens groups. I go to places where retirement centers. And one of the issues I talk about is student loan debt. Not because many people in that room have student loan debt, but because it is part of the statement that we're in this together. And I got to tell you, there are a lot of people in that room, have children, who have grandchildren, who are saying, I get it, but here's the deal. Even if you don't, you got to understand that's why we do this. Medicaid, the ultimate example on this. 2 out of every 3 seniors in a nursing home counting on Medicaid to get them through. Your neighbor who uses a wheelchair counts on Medicaid, that visitor who comes, home health aide who comes 2 hours a day so she can live at home. The family whose baby runs up $1 million in medical bills in the first 6 weeks, even though the family has insurance. They got to count on Medicaid to provide all those therapists and equipment and so on. And that's how I see America. We don't know whose grandma's going to outlive her savings. We don't know who's going to get hit by a bus and need help. We don't know whose beloved niece is going to have that baby that's going to run up $1 million in medical bills. But what we know is there's value in each of us. We believe in what we build together. We all are willing to pitch in some so that if those things happen, we're there for each other.
That's right. Yeah.
We're there.
It's part of that fundamental promise of America to each other. Yeah, thank you.
It's the promise. It's a promise we gotta live again. It's the promise we gotta make real again. It's the promise we gotta get out there and fight for.
Yes. Well, so glad to have you in the fight. Thank you so much. And I actually live in DC, so as a neighbor of yours.
Good. So I'll see you around.
Absolutely.
Okay, good.